Hello.
And that did it. Everyone can hear her, right? Woohoo! God damn it. Okay.
Oh, that was painful, but
So
you know
so
what?
in case
It's okay. It's okay. I was literally on a call for like 6 hours last Sunday because of a prod issue. So I feel the pain. It lasted all day. The next morning we finally got a hold of the vendor. One click. One click from the vendor and it all fixed.
you know,
So it's
so
all
we're
right.
going to talk about debugging this because it's a worthwhile lesson and I don't mind being somewhat humiliated. But hey, I called tech support and they couldn't help me either, right? Uh um so here's the story. The way you screw up debugging is you go down the wrong path for what to look for. So you're busy troubleshooting what's not the problem. There were two problems here. The first is I was right and OBS erased the tie to the audio when we upgraded. Okay, so I was right on that part, but I was wrong. I then got sucked into that. Like, am I resetting this to the right thing? And I was troubleshooting the wrong path like a moron or the incomplete path. The other problem was that I had earlier today doing something else muted my desktop speakers. So the source, when I put the right source on, you couldn't hear anything because it was effing muted. So I fixed OBS and left the desktop muted. And as soon as I realized the desktop was muted, as Kristen just said, one click. So this is how all debugging goes, though. If you're not in tech, or even if you are in tech, it's almost always the case that the problem is super easy to fix once you figure out what the hell the problem is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and if you get sucked in to the wrong line of debugging, you're screwed. So this is actually a worthwhile lesson where I can share my little humiliating incident and explain it. If a problem is not getting solved or if you're stuck, you need someone else to come in or you need to step back and look from a bigger level because I was too far down the rat hole of what is wrong with Streamlabs. And then I was blind to the fact that the stupid desktop was also muted. So I fixed the Streamlabs problem really quickly, but then I didn't pull back and look for the rest of the
Yeah.
problem until I was almost ready.
See,
Yeah, give up.
what
Go
this
ahead.
this
Okay.
actually was a test because Ethan wanted to see who in chat should be the
Would
volunteers.
stick around. It was
Yeah. And anyone that had good ideas or had good problem solving skills can then be the volunteers, for the mentorship tech.
well,
So I think we've got a couple X Splasher, Coder. There you go.
yeah, we
Uh,
we
Drunk one,
definitely.
where
You're
was he?
right. We pulled them out. We pulled them out.
Yeah, got a few.
We got them to out. The people are like, as a coder, I feel that so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we also got the chick comment, so we know to watch Tim
Hmm.
Preston.
Yeah,
Um,
and Half Drunk Hero had lots of ideas, so maybe another good problem solver in tech.
all right, so since you're here, let me reintroduce Kristen. So Kristen is someone I started coaching 18 months ago, 21 months ago, August 2019, pre-pandemic. She volunteered to come on and expose her life and career to you friendly folks so that you could learn from her growth. Now, luckily, or fun, she's had a rocket ride at her job. Her team has grown. She moved from being an individual contributor to being a manager. And she's got some more interesting news today. And one of her challenges is her boss would like to give her a raise. And so I don't know anything more about that than what I pasted in chat a little while ago, what she wrote me. But her boss delegated to her the job of justifying the raise, pull together the things that support a raise. Oh, there's Shadow. Hey, Shadow, we were just having another OBS tech fiesta, but turns out since you were tied up with enough random clicking on buttons, I fixed it. Yeah. I can turn the echo back on though if you'd like a shot at it. I know how to do it now.
Hmm.
You can go listen to the VOD for 30 minutes of random reverb and a little bit of cussing. It is Monkeys and Shakespeare. Does everybody know that reference? The idea is if you have an infinite number of monkeys on an infinite number of keyboards, they will eventually reproduce Shakespeare. So it just takes enough time. Yeah, so that's me and OBS. But thank you for turning up. Um, and feel free to hang out or not. I know you have a backyard to redecorate. So anyway, but yeah, the stream wanted me to call Devin Nash as a lifeline. So, and I didn't go there. All right.
Next time.
Yeah. So Kristen, tell us what your boss asked you to do. Like, give us the framework, and then we'll talk about.
Yeah.
I'll give the general how to
Right.
justify a raise, and then we'll talk about your specifics.
Cool. Okay, so if you guys remember, I, quickly moved into management. Started out, he took a risk on me. I took a risk with him. At least that's what he thinks, right? So I knew going in, it was a significant raise for me as an individual contributor to management, but I knew I was on the low end, and I thought it's okay. I'm going to put in a year, and by my annual review, we can talk and see if I've met expectations. I'm going to work really hard as well. 1 year in, it's the middle of the pandemic, right? So we did a great job as a company in terms of, people still got bonuses, no one got laid off. There was a lot of hard work going into that. But I knew I couldn't expect more than what was kind of average, right? So I waited, and then actually what triggered it is I had a couple of associates who got some pretty good offers, and I had to do this for them. I had to build a case for them and work with my boss on that. And he made a comment the one day, and he said, I'm just waiting for the day you're going to be bringing this to me about yourself. And I was like, well, I'm not planning on leaving anytime soon, but I most certainly would enjoy talking about compensation. And he's like, all right, I'm ready for the conversation. I said, all right. So then I waited, and then the next, time we talked, I just opened up the door, and I didn't have to really say much. He was like, yeah, I know that my boss is going to be approaching me about who do we need to take care of, and you're the first person on my list that needs to be taken care of. So give me, I think he asked for 4 to 6 weeks because there were some changes happening, and he wanted to see what would shake out. He said, if we don't get our answer by then, I will pursue this separately. So I waited. I was really patient. I didn't bring it up. And then recently we were talking, and I just said, hey, just wanted to check in. You asked me to wait. I haven't heard anything. Is there anything that I can do to help with this conversation? And he said, oh yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I have it on my to-do list. But since you've mentioned it, if you could pull together something similar to what you did for your associates, your directs, that would be really helpful. And then I'll take it and I'll add my own flavor to it. I'll add my own thoughts. And we'll get there. And so I said, okay, that sounds good. And I started pulling some stuff together, and I talked with him again the other day, and he said he actually went into this whole long conversation that I wasn't expecting, where he was just like, yeah, I'm not going to settle for less than X% raise. That's not where I'm going to start. So once you send over the data to me, I'll start working on that. And he said, because I mentioned to him actually about how it's really hard to determine your value. So this is where I was going before I started this conversation with him. The reason I hadn't pursued it, one, is probably because I'm an Enneagram 2, and I felt guilty asking for more money, especially after a pandemic, such a hard year, right? So I felt guilty asking for that. And then the second thing is I felt like I needed to determine my value before I made the ask. Well, I decided to open the conversation anyway. And when we were talking yesterday, he said, don't worry about determining your value. because corporations are always going to put their own spin, have their own limitations. That's not necessarily where I need you to focus. He said, let me worry about the money. He said, I know that because of the way that our compensation typically assesses raises for folks or people getting jobs, they look at years of experience. That's like pretty much their formula. And obviously, that's not going to help me out a whole lot since I'm pretty fresh. And he was like, I know that, and I'm prepared to have the conversation with my boss about this because we can't have them assessing you based on your experience. They need to be assessing you based on what you've done, what you've accomplished, and the value you've already provided to the organization. And I had also mentioned to him about how, as a woman, it's kind of hard to make this ask. And I know that typically women don't push as hard. And he was like, he basically said, look, I want, and I don't think these are just words. Maybe from another boss, it would be just words. But he said, as long as you're working for me, that's not going to be the case. I have a wife who works. I have a daughter who I hope to have as, every possibility in the world. And sometimes it gets me in trouble because I hold women to the same expectations that I hold men that work for me. And sometimes that's hard because of the way that corporations can operate. He said, but there's going to be there's absolutely not going to be any discrimination allowed when he's looking into this for me. So I just kind of like put it out there. I was honest about why it was hard for me to have the conversation. And then I asked him how I could help. And so this is now what I have to do. I know he's, as many good leaders are, data centric. So I'm trying to figure out how to translate what I've done into data, which is kind of hard because a lot of what I've done is relationship building, not just with my team, but with other teams. It's where my strength lies, and he knows that. And so I'm trying to figure out how to pull metrics together. And that's part of what I want to talk about, is how to build a case for me specifically with the things that I've worked on over the last year and a half.
Sweet. All right. You said so many things. It was difficult for me not to interrupt you to talk about some of the tips for everybody. So first, for all you Magic Loop fans or anybody who's new to the channel, I haven't done a show on the Magic Loop in a while, but we can at least pull it up here in chat as a reference, and then you can go find the video on it. Kristen did excellent work, obviously, to get herself in a position where the boss wants to help. So the first thing he said is, you're on the top of my list of people to take care of. Well, Kristen didn't get in that situation accidentally. We've been coaching her, and she has figured out how to do good work and to deliver value, and that's been recognized. So the first thing is get yourself into that position. So asking for a raise is, to be fair, and we're going to talk about what you need to do to support the process, but you have a paved road. You have a boss who wants to do this for you and is just asking for data. That is the easiest case, which is great. Nothing wrong with that. Celebrate. Throw your hands up and go take the money. Now, this is where I'm going to slightly sharpen things back at you, though. He literally said, he kind of led you to asking him, right? You're bringing him cases to give raises to your people. And he's literally like, when are you going to ask me for one for you?
Yeah.
Safety tip, you're leaving money on the table if your boss is sitting around waiting for you to ask for a raise and you haven't. Now, Kristen has had a rocket ride of a career. She already said she got a pretty good raise. And it's not unreasonable that she would be trying to be patient. So I don't really fault her. But for all of you watching and for her, you never want to leave money on the table because you never know when money will go away. You never know when there'll be a downturn or you'll run into sudden expenses in your life and in your family or whatever happens, and you'll wish you'd had it. You also never know, unfortunately, and your boss seems like a great guy, but I know he's planning on retiring in a few years. You only have so long to claim the good. And I will say, so everybody knows, like in my early career, my second boss, um, gave me huge raises, and my income almost doubled when I was working for this woman. And then I went into a dark period where I worked for a guy who was kind of a jerk, and then I left to a different company, and that company got bought and sold. And like 2 years later, I was right where I was or even below it. And then I had another period where my income shot up, and I went up like 60% in 2 years. And then I had like 3 years of complete stagnation. So it's very, very uneven. So when the getting is good, you want to get it, because as much as I would like to believe that through my brilliant coaching and Kristen being so wonderful, she will simply become, the next billionaire woman leader. That may not happen, tragically. And that's because sometimes you get in bad circumstances where nothing you do seems to help, and you just have to hold on and grit your teeth. Economic downturns are one thing that can cause that. Pandemics. I mean, shit goes wrong. Okay, so the chide back to you is you've left a little money on the table. But okay, so now we go on from that. Let's talk about what it normally takes people to get a raise. Well, in the end, raises are about a few things. Number one, we've talked about this in past shows, but I'll repeat it. They are about asking. I think, Shadow, you missed, you were tuned out when I asked in chat. I'm going to just interrupt myself, and I'll go back to number one and leave you with a cliffhanger. I said, Shadow, I think we need to get around to talking about when you need a raise. Not from me, by the way, chat, at her job. It's probably time. Unless they've been paying you more, we ought to, like, Shadow, you ought to listen to this show, and then we ought to apply it in your world.
Yeah.
So anyway, the number one thing about getting a raise is asking. Something like 70% of people have never actually asked for a raise of any kind, or at least in their current job. But 70% of people who do ask, so if you take that 30% who ask, 70% of them get something. They may not get what they ask for. They may only get extra vacation or a bonus or, but they get something. And so basically, if you just gut up and make a good ask, you're likely to get something. Now, this is dumb, right? Like, why? Look, our whole pay system is dumb. It's not based on, so if you have this illusion that it's based on what you're worth, please throw that away. It's not. It's based on, unfortunately, what you can get and how afraid your leadership is of you leaving. And so as an example, I just coached a guy. I coach a guy, and he went and interviewed somewhere else, and they offered him a 60% increase, but he really wanted to stay where he was. So he went back to his existing employer and said, these other people offered me 60% more, and his current company offered him 50% more. And he decided, well, I like my current company enough that I'll let go of that little difference. And I'll stay where I'm at. But he got a 50% raise by going on an interview, getting an offer, and coming back to his current employer. And by the way, he's a more senior person, so Ferrari money, right? Like, and it took him, a few hours of tough negotiation. So, first thing is go ask. Kristen's at that stage. She's got the ask. Second thing is build your case. Why are you worth it? Well, one way to build your case is have a competing offer. Have someone else willing to pay that. That's kind of de facto. But internally, you have two things going on. Number one, Kristen knows she's low in the pay range. So she has knowledge. Bigger companies have pay ranges. Smaller companies don't. If you're low in the range, they have a lot of room to move you up. And actually, companies want to pay you in the middle of a pay range. And the reason is they're afraid that if they're paying you at the bottom, that you're easy to poach because someone will come take you. So like this guy who got the giant raise I was just talking about, he was at the bottom of the range and they simply moved him all the way to the top. So his 50% raise took him from the dead bottom of his range to the complete top. So
he
he's
was
kind
still
of
in the
out of room,
range.
but big range. Yeah, big range.
Yeah, we have big ranges too.
Exactly. Actually, ranges are usually pretty wide. And so if you're at the bottom, I don't know what you're paid. And, you know, but I am curious, by the way, I think you could share. I don't think it's dangerous to share. You don't have to. But when your boss said, I was going to get to this, when your boss said he was targeting an X% range, what was X?
He said minimum rate, and the minimum percent raise he will be satisfied with is 10%.
Mm-hmm. Good. Double
Minimum
digit.
he would take is 10%.
Good. Double digit.
Yeah.
So for anybody who doesn't know, 10% is the benchmark for a good raise. Now, a lot of companies, including my beloved Amazon, set up the raise pool for a year to be between 2 and 3%. Like that's the standard raise.
Yep.
Inflation, cost of living, that kind of stuff.
Same for us. 2 to 3 annually.
Like
we're trying to get into real performance raises because that's the way to reward people who are driven and work hard. Because people, I mean, and I'm not even referencing myself here. Like I have associates who are new to the field or are super young. Like I have, I celebrated someone's 21st birthday on my team. That was weird. And I'm like, what was I doing at 21? Like certainly not making the money that I know you're making or like doing the work you're doing. I was like drinking on a boat in Paris.
Nice.
So
solid call.
So yeah. but yeah, it's I don't know. It's wild.
Yeah, so for everybody, I see Awesome commenting here. Look, 2 to 3% raises are beneath shit, right? But that's what most of America deals with. And if you want to break out of that, you gotta you gotta break out and get more. And the way you do that, the way you do that. Go ahead.
Well, part of what I did, because I have a friend who was in HR when I was first becoming a manager.
Okay.
And so I just asked her straight up, like, what's the maximum percent increase I can expect compensation to approve here? And so she told me, and I know that it's very unlikely that they're going to go above like 15. They might go up to like 17%. It's very unlikely they'll ever go higher than that. They pretty much always cap it off. So I know that. And so before starting this conversation, I already thought in my head, like what I think would be satisfactory, thinking in terms of what I know is feasible. And then, you know, what could I ask that's towards the higher end to push them to the maximum of what they do? Because I know from my own experience of trying to get my directs raises, I know how conservative they are. But I also know that if I push hard enough, they will come up to, you know, the maximum that they're willing to do. And so, you know, I kind of kept that in mind when I was preparing. I wanted to be prepared so that if my boss asked me, I was ready to respond.
Yep. Great. So now Kristen's showcasing another great trait here. Ask around, talk to your coworkers on the sly or make friends and have data. Mm-hmm. She's well armed. Despite the fact, let's say her boss wasn't hot to give her a raise, wasn't interested in it necessarily. She knows she's near the bottom of the range, and she knows that the company will do a raise of 15 to 17%, even though their default is only 2 to 3%. Get information, ask around, talk to people, know where you are in the range. Look, millennials are famous, by the way. And many of you listening, not all, are millennials. Millennials are famous for being willing to share what they're paid and what their last raise was and what, like, people talk. Go on Blind. There are ways. Go on salary.com. There are ways to figure out what your job is worth. And by the way, Kristen, if you're trying, I know that he said don't worry about it, but if you want to benchmark your job, one thing you can do is use salary.com to benchmark your job in your region. So you know kind of
And
what it is.
I did do that, and
Good.
it was a little bit lower even than what I was hoping for, and that's okay. It's just good knowledge to have.
Hmm.
And I know, like, I know what all my directs make. I have an inkling of what a lot of my peers' directs make because of conversations we've had trying to help each other build cases, and
Yep.
stuff like that. And so all this contextual information I have kept in my head to arm me with the data that I need to know what I can confidently ask for. Because you're right, like, it's not really about your value. It's about, like, where you work and what they're willing and able to do. And as long as you are providing value, you can push for that.
Mod, somebody reach out to a Turd. I think he was trying to link something useful about other websites where you can benchmark salary. So we have linking turned off for most people, but we have a few mods here who can post that for you. Okay, sweet. So you can. So the point is, Kristen's done her homework on that sense. So now what remains is the task she has in front of her now tonight, which is how to justify, how to help support the case. Did they give you? What did your previous cases look like that he liked?
So it was any data points showing where the associate has gone above and beyond what they're currently paid for. And then how are they representing the values of our organization with examples,
Okay.
and a story basically to speak to how they're living out those values and why they are an asset that we don't want to lose. So it was a lot of just kind of data and bullet points on what's been accomplished that they were either a part of or led, especially if they led.
Yep.
And then some of it he would reply, because I sent him my stuff. He would reply and be like, well, I feel like that's maybe expected of the job. Okay, that's fine, that's fair. Pared
Yep.
it down. So part of what I'm trying to do is what's expected and what have I done that's been above and beyond. And I'm so brand new to this world that I don't really know. Like, I just operate how I think I need to operate. I treat people the way I think I need to treat people. No one's taught me any of this. I didn't have any training. I still haven't gotten any training from the organization, even though they have something that got put on hold because of the pandemic. I don't know. I never got it. So I've just been flying by the seat of my pants. It seems to be working. It has its cons,
Well,
but
so one of the things you just mentioned is a great accomplishment to put on there, which is grew into successful management role without the opportunity for planned training. I think they've talked about it. Basically, you find some way to say like, hey, I wasn't trained for this, but I'm succeeding. And I think the company, you can find the words to say, you guys planned on training me, but you actually haven't, and I've figured it out anyway. And so the positive way to say that is, due to limited available training, self-taught basics of management to lead team to XYZ goals or whatever. You can play with the words. The thing I would suggest, since he's willing to give you feedback and iterate, is put together a list that's rather more generous about what you think you've done as a bullet list, and send it to him and say, look, I know you want to build a case. I want to iterate with you quickly. Here are all the things I think I've done that might be notable. I realize the list is a little long. What are the top ones that resonate with you? Or what are the top ones you'd like me to build out with more detail? So I would send him a quick bullet list of things you've done. Okay. And, tell him. You can even say, I've noticed in the past you give feedback about what's expected in the role versus what's exceptional. Mm-hmm. I'm not super clear on everything you might consider expected versus exceptional. So I've given you a longer list. Tell me what resonates and will help you. And that's the easiest way to go fishing in your case. And then you kind of include a longer list. Because that's also a good way to remind him of all the things you're doing that are expected as well as exceptional.
Just standard work.
Yep. Not again. This is a little bit of a game. Even though he's in your corner, you want to make him feel really good about the ask.
Yeah.
And then for the exceptional stuff, it's usually anything that goes above and beyond on a cross-team basis. It's anything that's Magic Loop, anything you've asked for, special projects. I remember you took on a second team, so you could talk about expanding from one team to two teams.
Yeah, I mean, I could give you a little rundown of some of
Sure.
the stuff that I've
Yeah, go
noted,
ahead.
and you can kind of tell me. Okay, so one of the things that I did is I pursued an opportunity to get grant money for training for our associates. And I have now been reaching out to other managers and getting some of their teams involved. And so I have over 20 people who have gotten training. We've gotten over $60,000 worth of grant money. So training that's for free, 60K.
Grant money. So you mean external to the company?
Yeah,
Oh,
grant
that's
money from
solid.
the state of Ohio.
Grant money.
Yep.
That's super
And
solid.
I've pulled them in. I just pulled together a PowerPoint. I showed it with all the directors and managers, and I've had a few of them reach out to me. So I've made sure that I spread this out to other teams so that it wasn't just my team before I presented it to everyone. And I pulled together like all the data showing, the different teams and the pie chart of, their participation in this and different types of courses that they've learned. So that's like one actual data point that I have, which is great. And literally every VP got this introduction, this was available, and I am the only person that responded to it and worked with our learning department to leverage it. And so I've now become the point of contact. I am the one who owns the relationship with the vendor, and I'm the one who everyone is funneling through in order to access this. And I've been working with some people to help. So that's one area of accomplishment. And then when you look at my own,
by the way, free money for the company, working across multiple teams, showing proactivity, those are all pretty big.
And then when you look at my own team's growth, I have 60% of my team has grown into a promotion or into a new skill that's leading to a promotion and is changing their title. 10% of them are in the process of it. So that's only 30% who are currently not moving up. And it's because one of them is senior, one of them is still pretty brand new, and one of them is a contractor. I'm still giving him training, but he's not getting promoted or anything.
So you headline
and so that's actual job title changes. Like
Yep.
I went through and I restructured my team in order to facilitate easier growth, and to coincide with the vision that I think my boss has and for the department. And so I've kind of set the stage, and now he's asking other teams under him to do the same thing that I've done. So I've kind of set an example of an easier way for us to grow our teams, to keep things a little bit more generic and not so specified, but not necessarily saying you can't specialize in something. And then I've been working individually, carving out partially with some of this free training, but also with pairing, with mentoring. I've done a whole lot of work to get my team what they need to grow into the next level. So my team has seen a lot of growth and change, just even on their own individual development plans.
Okay. So I'm thinking about rattling on. Well, you were going to tell me your list. What I'll do at the end, chat can prompt me once Kristen's done. That's awesome. You would headline that under personnel development or developing people.
Mm-hmm.
But I need to list off like all the avenues where you can stand out, all the different pieces. Okay. So I'll do that at the end. What else you got? Okay. Those are both great.
So around partnerships, I have built a bridge between infrastructure and my team. A lot of that has come from my second team that I took on, which is the cloud operations team. So I've made a lot of inroads with some really important players, infrastructure, InfoSec, the project management office. And we have actually done and implemented some stuff. So we've never had infrastructure as a service. And I've been the one kind of pulling the groups together to deal with that. Same thing with setting up log analytics. Like there's just some really big projects that are new to our ecosystem. And teams that have not paired, have not had a bridge, that I've been pushing. I've been very intentional about spending a lot of one-on-one time, getting to know these managers, presenting myself as how can I help you? We've talked about that a little bit in the past. So I've also included 2 other products that exist outside of my team, the rest of IS, which, just for the record, again, it's about an 800 associate IT world, basically, that I'm living in. So working with other teams is sometimes really difficult. And Anyway, so I've gotten some growth. I've expanded automation into products outside of our department that never happened before. We were very immature in automation and only focused on what was within our engineering department. We've now started reaching out. We've done some POCs. We have an actual product outside of our own department that we're serving, which is the goal, because we want to be serving the enterprise. That's the direction that we're headed. And so these inroads are really important, and the success of these initial partnerships is really important for us to do well. We've increased our automation coverage by, gosh, I don't actually have all the percentages yet. I can get those, but I want to say like 60 to 70% for one of our existing products. And we've started automation on a handful of other products that are going to be completed probably by the end of summer, which is huge. And I have a lot of data on the hours, the manual hours that we're saving by implementing this automation. We've also right-sized our capacity reservation for our cloud environment. This is brand new. It's super immature. My team has probably saved the organization, I don't know, maybe like $800,000 because of right-sizing this, because we were getting charged an insane overage rate. So we've continued to address that and be the gatekeepers.
So you think you've saved 800 grand?
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty big headline.
Yeah.
I mean,
if we weren't doing anything else, it's because there's no one running the show. That's the problem. And we're working to correct it. But if we weren't there making these changes and paying attention, and I've been bubbling up this information as the gatekeepers of what goes into cloud, it's been pretty insane. It's a wild ride. So we're still figuring that out, but there's been a ton of money that we have saved the organization because we were paying attention.
Nice.
So we also implemented a new tool to handle cost management tool for cloud, because you absolutely have to have something like that. We did all the vetting. Folks, we got a really good deal.
I'm gonna interrupt here. Look at Kristen's list. Okay, if you want to know how to get a raise and how to get your boss in your corner, okay, listen to Kristen's list. Saving money, developing people, getting them promoted. We're going to ask some questions about some other areas if she doesn't get to them. But like in the end, for most businesses, money talks. She got grant money coming in so that people got trained and it didn't cost the company a dime, and she saved them money. That pretty much right there is a raise case. Like if she wanted to be hard as nails, she'd go in and say, look, I saved you 800 blink blank grand. I can either keep doing that here, or I can do that for somebody else. But that's a fact. And like, you just need it. Like the annual raise you're talking about for me, even if you max out your percentage, is like 1% of that. Get real. Okay. If I were on commission, you'd pay 10 points of commission on that. Now that's like the hard hitting, frankly, stereotyping male version of it. Slapping people back and forth, and her boss is on her side, so there's no need to do that. But I just want to point out, there's a saying in the legal profession, which is when the law is on your side, argue the law. When the data is on your side or the facts are on your side, argue the facts. And if neither the law or the facts are on your side, pound the table. Well, when you have a list of stuff, when you have a list of basically the law on your side at that level, it's totally it's totally valuable. So keep going.
Okay. So I've also pushed my team to try some new technologies. For example, we implemented a grid, so we were able to increase the number of devices that we were able to run on our automation suites from 1 or 2 to 10 to, I think it's 15. which is increasing our speed of automation, which is decreasing, the overall time it takes to run that. Which we have a new product, which is automation on demand, which our manual testers can use, which is saving them hours of time every time that they run it. We
So,
also
sorry, I was busy thinking about some of the chat comments. Say that again about saving time with automation and how that came about.
Yeah, so we created an automation on demand product so that our
Okay.
manual testers could use it, and at any time they want to run the suite, they can. It does take a lot of maintenance. But we also implemented a grid. So these are the types of things that I don't know a lot of this technology, but I read stuff. And when I see something interesting, I say, hey, have we looked into something like this? Let's, I think this could be valuable, blah, blah, blah. Then they run with it. So one of those things that came of that was we created a grid, our own grid, that then we were
What's a
able to
grid?
increase the
Chat
number.
wants to know what's a grid.
So when you're running an automation test, it's development, it's code that is automatically doing what you normally would be pointing and clicking and scrolling and doing to test something,
Yep.
to test the product. So this is test automation. So when you build a script, you can have it running on a specified server. And on that server, you have devices connected. We actually have some real devices plugged in, right, that we leverage. And so what we did is instead of only being able to run one device with that code at one time, and then it has to wait and do it on the next device. So we do iOS, we do Android, we do an older iOS, older Android, or whatever. The grid now enables us to click go or have that automated script run, and it runs on 10 to 15 devices at one time. So if the script takes 15 minutes to run, let's say just one script, that's 15 minutes, and then each device you want to test it on, 15 minutes, 15 minutes, 15 minutes. We've changed that so that we don't have to do it one at a time now.
Yep.
We can do it on multiple devices all at once.
Yeah, you've put it in parallel. So this is one of the questions I want to ask you because you have such a long list of accomplishments. One of your challenges, is limited personal technical knowledge. I'm curious, is there anything you'll be able to say about how you've grown your own understanding of what your team does?
Gosh, that's really hard because I probably would say no, I don't understand what they do half the time, but I actually learned a shit ton. I just don't know it.
So those two statements contradict each other.
In it. I know. It's just because I can't stop and formalize everything that I've learned. It's just like I didn't know what parallels were. I didn't know anything about I've learned a lot, but I still feel like there's so much that I don't understand, or I only understand, this far in, and it goes like this deep. And so I still pretty much feel like a novice all the time. But I know enough to help problem solve. I know enough to help encourage and spark curiosity, and so but to speak to that, no, I mean, I don't have any certifications or anything formal that I've done.
Yeah, so you don't have
that
data.
I've learned
Your boss wants data. But what is your boss's title?
He's the VP and Chief Technology Officer.
Right.
VP of Engineering, Enterprise Software Engineering,
yep.
and Chief Technology Officer.
So Kristen is in a very unique position. She's non-technical background, leading a technical team, reporting to the Chief Technical Officer. This is actually one of the few and luckily she's doing enough based off her interpersonal skills to be considered successful and highly valued. Nonetheless, this is a risky proposition. You're leading tech people for a tech leader without understanding tech. Now, I think being a coder, as an example, is overrated as strictly necessary for leading tech. I think some of the things she's done with human development can cover some of that. But it's still a dangerous position to leave yourself in. So I wanted to ask this question because even if this doesn't go in your promo, I have two recommendations for you.
Okay.
Number one, try to figure out how you could quantify or at least qualify what you've learned. You might even do that by asking some of your senior employees, like, hey, I've been doing this for a while. I know I'm still learning technically, but how would you characterize my technical learning. And then second, I would keep thinking about how can you increase that? Because this is not related to getting a raise, but it is a prediction. Eventually, if you stay in tech, there will come a day where your lack of personal technical acumen will bite you, where finally something will happen where you need to understand and you don't, and something will slip beneath your vigilance because of that. And by the way, I'm not trying to turn you into a coder. I'm not trying to turn you into a programmer. I'm not saying any of that's necessary. I'm just saying relying only on human personnel management skills in a technical world is a little bit playing roulette. And eventually the ball will land on the wrong in the wrong color.
So this is interesting because I just had a call with my boss the other day about that prod outage that I mentioned is kind of where it started. And then we started talking about prod monitoring, and he asked me where we were at with that because it's in process, and he felt like we over-engineered it a little bit. And he looped in one of our architects into the conversation so that we could, discuss it. Well, I wasn't super involved in a lot of those decisions. For a good reason, but I could have asked more questions, which is one of the things I took away from it. He asked me what the number one takeaway from all those conversations was. And he said I had 3 chances. I was like, oh, shoot.
Good.
I did not get it in the 3 chances. And I knew I wasn't because I could not tell where he was going. And he was like, those are all great ideas and you should do those. You should do all of those things that you just said. He said, but the thing I wanted you to take away most is I don't expect you to understand or have the answers to the questions that I ask, especially when it comes to the technology. I expect you to know who to talk to and who to bring in. And I want you to bring in those experts earlier. And even if it's him. And I was like, well, I don't want to bring you into the nitty gritty unless I absolutely have to. And he said, I'm here to support you, whatever that support needs. And for you, if you need help understanding because you're not sure if this is the right decision, you can float it by me. And that's what I'm here for. I'm here to support you.
Who's this again? Your boss or
my boss?
Yeah.
My boss.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I'm like, okay. So he, and I was going to take a Java course through the grant funding. And he was like, I don't think you should spend your time doing that.
And I agree with that, probably.
He said, I don't need you to learn that stuff. If I ever need you to learn a skill, a technology skill, we can figure that out. He said, I want you to continue to focus on building these relationships with the other parts of the organization. That's what he wanted me to focus on. And so I have. But I like somebody in chat said, just hang out with the devs for 15 minutes a day or something. And it's true. Anytime that I'm meeting with them, a lot of times in our one-to-ones, I'll say, what have you worked on? Hey, can you show me anything? And they're always like, oh, you want to see what I'm doing?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, show me. And then they get excited. People sometimes just need to share what they're doing, right? And I always learn something. I may not understand all of it, but I pick up something. I learn about, what a base page is. I learned something along the way in every conversation that I have, which is good for me, and I enjoy it, and they clearly enjoy it. So I think that's a good idea. Is that maybe I need to carve out a little bit more of that in my one-to-ones just for now, because it gives my team the opportunity to be excited and share what they're doing, and then it will also teach me in the process. But yeah. I do actually meet with one of my devs weekly for 30 minutes, and for a while, it was called "What Can I Learn Today?" That's what I titled the meeting, and I literally just had her walk me through stuff to try to teach me. It's kind of morphed into something else a little bit more, like whatever we need to be figuring out, and more strategy oriented. But I could easily get back into picking some technology topics. I think that would be good.
So I've said this before in other forums here. 15 minutes a day or an hour a week doesn't sound like much until you do the math over the course of a year and you realize it's 50 hours or 70, 60 some if you go with 15 minutes every day. And 50 hours is a real chunk. And you can do even a little more than that. But 15 minutes a day turns into 50 plus hours during the course of the year. And that's enough to make a difference. And I kept myself technically in touch with my teams in about 90 minutes a week, which is, Kristen's talking about 75 minutes a week. Now, I had a technical background, so I had a little bit easier time. But never be afraid to start small and start learning. Just keep at it. And a few minutes a day adds up. And be curious. Ask, teach me something, tell me something, explain it to me. Your team knows you're not technical background, but if you show an interest in learning, as you've seen, they'll show an interest in teaching.
Yep.
And that is what it takes. You're not going to solve this problem, this gap. But when I think about how I would evaluate giving you a raise, if I were your boss, he's not asking about this, it turns out, apparently. But I would be worried about your chance of missing something critical. And it would mean a lot to me to show that you had an education plan for yourself and that you could speak to it and say, look, I'm making a strategic investment, not that's a distraction or killing my focus, but I found a way as a win-win. In all my one-on-ones with my devs, I asked them to teach me something or to explain what they're doing so that I can learn. And they like it because I seem interested in their details of what they're doing. And I like it because it's making me a stronger leader within the IT organization. Something like that. It sounds great on paper.
That's true. Well, and it's all accurate. Sometimes I review documentation for them just because, one, it's a good gauge. If I can understand it, they've done well. And laying it all out, making it, relatable. And I always learn something from it. And I usually have some feedback for them or some follow-up questions, which have been good.
Yep. So I think you're onto a good track. So I interrupted you. Look, it sounds like you have plenty for your case. Are there any other key elements you really want to bring up in your case?
I mean, as part of those partnerships with some of the other managers, I have a list of like 10 to 15 people who are going to get trained in cloud that have no cloud training at all, that are in infrastructure. And so they're the ones who are kind of like, ooh, like, is my job still going to be here? What if we go to the cloud? Like, there's just a lot of tension and stuff there. So to have that lined up, and I just renegotiated the contract with our the tool that we use for training. So that I could get a little bit more. I strategically added some more, and I got approval from my boss because I plan on transitioning these licenses around with these different folks who need it, because I can't be successful if other areas of the organization don't come along for the ride.
Yep.
So I did that. I've also been super active in a couple committees that are focused on some of our core values as an organization. I've been really active in leading some of those efforts, especially around inclusion, diversity and inclusion, and well-being. So that's been something I've been doing kind of on the side, but I'm very passionate about it. And I've enjoyed getting involved, and the people who are leading it have sought me out to be a part of it because of what they've seen me doing. And then there's a couple other more like community oriented things that I've done, or relational things. So like when someone's mom passed away, I organized a bunch of stuff. We did an adopt a family for Christmas. We had someone retire. I'm always the one who's doing all of that stuff, like all that extra.
And
that's more relational.
Well, I would try to put those all under one heading, like supporting office cohesion and culture. So a question I had that I said I would ask you, and it came up earlier in chat, was how's your team retention been? You've got about 10 people on your team. What's the
Yeah,
turnover been like?
I've only lost one person, and it was really good for him. And he had a good opportunity. He was in a different tier as far as pay grades go. So it would have been really hard for me to bring him up just from a compensation HR conversation to what he really should have been at. So I fully supported his decision to move out. Um, but yeah, everyone else has been retained. I've just grown, gotten really great feedback from my team. I have a lot of quotes from people on my team and from outside of my team. So someone had mentioned in chat, like, jotting things down, accomplishments down.
Quotes are
Well, I've been
good.
keeping track of what people have been saying to me. Um, one, just because on the hard days, it reminds me why I do what I do. But also just because I want to be able to look back and see like what I've accomplished. So I've got a lot of quotes from people that describe like what they appreciate about me and what I've brought to the team. I mean, my team was real small when we started and there was zero trust. It was it was actually really bad. It was in a really bad place. And they all have like, I mean, the feedback they're giving, like I brought in these two interns. I worked on this internship
Hmm.
program. And so, like, they're sharing to this intern about the team, and person after person after person is like, this is the healthiest team I've ever been on. We get so much support. We have so much learning that we've done. I've been invested in ways I didn't even think I was capable of. And here I am, like, doing these things, like, just all super positive. And it was just like music to my ears because that's what I set out to do. Like, that was my goal. And so there's a lot of trust. There's like immense support across my teams.
So
Um,
I think your challenge is going to be making things crisp for your boss,
mhm.
getting it down to not. I've talked before about particularly how women, it's not only women, but certain personality types and often women feel like if I can write enough, they have to believe me. And it's about coming down to those key results. You have tons of results. It's about figuring out the ones that punch and following Mark Twain's thing, which is if I'd have had more time, this would have been shorter. More words are not necessary here because
Right.
HR isn't going to want to read 4 pages of
Don't
stuff.
care.
They want to read
Right. Well, so
four to
Ethan, like to
six key
me,
bullets. Go ahead.
like building the trust amongst my team is like one of my what I take pride in. The fact that my new hires are like astounded at how healthy this is and they didn't realize how bad they had it in their past jobs, like is what I shot for. But like I don't think HR cares about I don't think they really care about
No,
that.
they care about value, but your boss has to want to make the argument. And so, what I was going to say, and I'll do this now, the perfect case for a raise has two pieces: several exceptional accomplishments, which you have, saving a ton of money, bringing in grants, expanding your team. But then the second part is being well rounded. So, not having a bunch of weaknesses. That's why I probed a little on tech. You also, interestingly, and this is for those of you who don't know Kristen, she leans very heavily into the human care side. She has said very little about project delivery and actually shipping what her team's job is on time. Now, I think you've
Yep.
done that, right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the changes that we've made strategically and building the foundation of what we do is we've changed how we track defects. We've changed literally the setup of how we handle that,
So none of
so that
this
we
is
could
what I'm
monitor
asking.
it.
Sorry. You had a set of
Okay.
your team had a set of goals or projects. Have you shipped them and were they on time?
Yes, we've shipped them on time. It's not my team's fault, but I would say, yeah, we've shipped on time, but the value that's been shipped is questionable because the strategy and the requirements that we were given were not very good, which is an issue and a huge tension between us and product.
So,
And that's something else I've been dealing with
yep.
a
So,
lot.
going to coach in two directions here. If this were an ownership conversation, saying it's not our fault is like an immediate
Yeah.
red buzzer statement.
Yep.
You're the leader. You own it all. You've seen my shows on Extreme Ownership with Devin.
Yep.
Okay.
It's all been done. It's all been done. We've done everything we've been given
I
on time.
understand, and that's good. But the
I just
ownership
don't think
part
it's
is
as
if it's not
valuable.
valuable and it's the wrong product, you got to fix that. That said, for a raise conversation, my point about being well-rounded, you want to list you basically, the perfect case for a raise is, look, I'm not fucking up any parts of the job. There's no parts of the job where I'm shitting the bed and that you have to worry. And then there's these several parts where I'm killing the job and doing extra value. That's the case for a raise. I'm solid and reliable everywhere. I'm not a liability. And then in these areas, I'm way above. So you have a bunch of things. You nailed the I'm way above. Nailed in spades, done. Stick a fork in it, move on. For the well-rounded, if not for HR, at least for your boss, well-rounded is good retention, good relationships with peers, but also delivery. You're actually there to ship things. And so you want to make sure to ship that.
So So what I could do is I could pull, if I need to get some data, I don't know, is this good? I could pull the number of releases that we've had since I've been managing this team. And I could even probably pull number of production defects that we've had and the time it took to remedy them. I don't know. Is that the type of data I could use for that story? See, this is where I struggle, Ethan, because like I'm not like, some people say you're either a developer of people or a driver of work. Like I'm a developer of people, and I make sure I develop those people so they can fucking drive the work themselves. Like, because I'm not gonna be in all of those nitty-gritty details. But I don't know. Would that be helpful? Is that the kind of data I should pull for that story?
Just 1 second. Anything that shows that you've met your goals, that you've shipped your products, if you have data on that, or even if you just tell it in English, any way you can show that you know, because in the end you lead a tech team, are you delivering tech? I'm just saying don't leave that out. Don't leave out or omit that you've led your tech team to develop the tech that they need to ship.
I mean, a lot of what I was talking about earlier around automation is where I've been focused. So there's been a lot of improvement there, but then also just in terms of like the releases for the products that we're automating or that we're manual testing, like I have all that data. We've not missed anything.
I would just put that in there as a bullet. Like the point again, the perfect case for a raise is I'm not missing on anything critical and I'm exceptional in this list of areas. You have the exceptional part covered. I want to make sure I want to make sure that you don't miss the other part.
Yeah, no, that's good. I will never focus on that. In fact, the rest of the things on my list are like, I've coached my team on conflict resolution with a lot of the product team because of those issues that we've had that I was just referring to. But we've made everything possible, even when we had limited bandwidth, even when I couldn't hire anybody during most of the pandemic, and we were just so overrun. Not only did we meet all of it, but I found a way to shift responsibility from person to person so that people could get breaks and recover.
Good.
And we're focusing on recovery now for our personnel. That's like Ohio Health. Yeah, we've made the decision here. We're going to focus. Like Ohio's been, I mean, everyone's been struggling, right? But healthcare especially has been really challenging. So we're focusing on our folks and making sure they have what they need. So I've been doing that all along, which is why the people who are leading the well-being stuff wanted to bring me in. And I felt honored for that.
So perfect. I think we've beaten this to death. You should go ahead and write it up, send it over to me. I'm happy to take a look at it. But remember, V1 you're sending your boss is these are my main areas. Which ones resonate with you? Which ones do you think I
Then
should
for each
omit because
detail.
they're part of the core job? And then
Okay.
I wouldn't hesitate to find a way to tell your boss, look, I know that I appreciate so much that you're committed to at least 10%. I do know that 15 to 17 is possible. And so I'd like to help you build a case for the high end of what's possible. Because as we've learned, I'll put up the book list. If you haven't read Jia Jiang and Rejection Proof, which she's heard about,
On my nightstand. It's
Kristen's
on
heard
my
about
nightstand.
Kristen's heard about plenty, but I'm talking for everyone else. If you don't ask, you don't get. And this is a book about a guy who was afraid to ask, and he learned to ask with like very quickly in 100 days. He took a 100-day challenge on himself to become good at asking. And on day 6, he had a breakout ask that became an internet hit. And now that's what he does for his living. So, like, it's a good book and it's a fun story. So go check it out. All right. So I think we've beaten arrays to death. A couple people put questions in our question tool.
Okay.
I'm going to look at them real quick. I'm going to speed answer them. Half Drunken Hero, by the way, I don't know as I've seen you around here before in chat, but I like what you're saying. You're a natural member of this community, so I hope you join our Discord and stick around because you've added a lot of value. I think Eximus, same thing. We've had a couple people here who are putting in good stuff in chat and part of the community. And so please stick around. All right. I feel like it's okay to job hop early in your career. I'm going to just, mods, I'll run the questions myself real quick. I feel like it's okay to job hop early on in your career, but what is the fine line with that? I.e., how long before it's okay to jump from one job to another? The super quick answer here is 2 years. Less than 2 years, you may get some questions. It's nice that you sometimes stay more than 2 years. You can get away with one job hop of less than 2 years if you've had some jobs that are 3 or 4 years. So if you have a 3-year job and then something sucks and you have to move in 6 months, that can work as long as you then have another 3-year job. What triggers people's suspicion is less than 2 years, less than 2 years, less than 2 years, less than 2 years. Because then I'm like, hey, if I bother to hire you, by the time I train you, you're moving on. Like, why should I do that? So I hope that's a quick answer for whomever asked that. The simple answer is 2 years. Sirags, well, come back another time and you can chat. I'm not trying to dish on people who can't talk because they're busy watching me while they're working. But, contribute later or join Discord and contribute there when you're not working. All right. So now we're going to hit up the next question real quick. So that question is, when would you recommend asking for a raise in a new position? After step 1 of the magic loop? Well, no, I would say after step 3. So we were talking about the magic loop. Let's see if I have this right. Working from memory. I finished my drink now, so, even my own stuff. See, I can't type magic loop. So, but it was a good drink. Do your basic job well. You're not going to get a raise for just doing your basic job well. So yeah, it's after step 3 is when you can ask for a raise. And you have to decide, by the way, you only have so much, your boss is only going to do so many things for you. And so you kind of have to choose. Step 4 here says, ask if you can help in a way that grows your career. So you want your boss to invest in you. Step 4 can be replaced with ask for a raise. Just understand that, like, you have to earn the credit by doing step 2 to get to do step 4. You do 2 and 3 or 1, 2, and 3 to get to number 4. If you want to use your free token at number 4 to ask for more money, you can, but then you're going to have to do more of 1, 2, and 3 to prove that you're worth that money before you can ask for number 4 again.
Well, and also, like, just as an example, when I had my 1-year review, I kind of put my feelers out for potential to get a raise.
Hmm.
And the response I got clearly told me that the organization was not in a position where they financially would be favorable for me to get the raise that I wanted. And so I decided to hold
Yeah.
on pushing that intentionally.
Understanding the macroeconomic circumstances of your business, fancy big polysyllabic words, but understanding the circumstances of your business is a huge deal. Understanding if your business is broke, if it's in a hard time, if it's weathering a pandemic, that's a hard time to ask for a raise. On the other hand, right after your business reports record profits or something like that can be a great time to ask for a raise. I once worked at a startup that was basically functioning on VC money and not making any income. And the CFO, regarding pay for me, he said, "Look, like we're on a camel in the middle of the desert and we only have so much water with us, and like we got to get to the other side before there's more water." Understanding that, you know, um, is worth knowing. But when you're coming, and it doesn't mean you shouldn't ask, by the way. Like there are times where I will unabashedly go to someone and say like, yeah, I know we're dead broke, but I'm the most important person who's going to get us out of dead broke, and like I'm earning it. So I'm part of our solution, pay up. But that you've got to know that's true. And in a big company, see, Kristen's part of how many approximately total
30,
people work in your company?
35,000.
Yeah. Kristen's not an executive. In a 35,000 person company, there's policies. And when they have a wage freeze or whatever, like,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter how good she is. Sometimes you're trapped in the policy trap. And it's better to just wait for a better time. So, look, um, it's also true, by the way, if you have an idea that raises are equally distributed, they're not. We're actually taught, as leaders, we're taught the following simple mantra. Feed your tigers or lions, ride your horses, shoot your dogs. And it's super mean, and like nobody wants to talk about that. That's the back management line, but you take your top performers and you feed them the red meat and you give them money. You take the people in the middle that are doing good work and you give them the standard 3% raise unless they ask for more, and then you give them 4% and you ride them hard. And the people who aren't delivering, you send home. And I'm giving you like the harsh Machiavellian thing. The really good leaders figure out a way to get everybody to be a tiger, and that's what they strive for. But even the most motivational manager I know on earth, who is not me, by the way, he occasionally shoots a dog because not everybody, it turns out, wants to work hard, even if they're given good opportunity. So you want to be the tiger in that, right? But yeah, I always share the harsh truth at Connoteur. That's part of what this channel is about, is telling it like it is. Well,
I've never heard that one, but it totally applies. Like I haven't had any dogs yet,
you
but
will.
like I've got horses and tigers,
Yeah.
like for sure. And I remember 40 Pink Dragons was it 40 Pink Dragons or you asking me at dinner, like if I was gonna be able to fire someone, like if I had to, like that's gonna be the hardest thing. I feel like maybe that was when you asked me that. And I was like, God, I really don't want to ever have to have to do that. But like, I can see it now. I do think that as empathetic as I am, I have grown a lot in that aspect of leadership. Like being objective has been something I've had to learn a lot about.
All right. Well, due to our tech problem, we've gone on a long time, and I know it's very late on the East Coast. Kristen, I know you had a second topic about how to structure your
Hmm.
org. Do you just want to send me something and I'll give you my input?
Um, Either that or we could wait until another conversation.
Can it
I
wait
don't
that
have a
long?
tight timeline.
Okay.
Hmm. Yeah, it's more like a philosophical exploration than
Okay.
anything.
Well,
But But yeah, I do want to explore it. I do have some what I would consider kind of wild ideas that I don't think are actually good ideas, but it might spark a good conversation
Well,
um, to have.
let me talk. So Kristen's been asked by the same boss, tell me how you'd restructure the org, not just her team, but the whole org. So let me give you a couple. I'll give Kristen a couple thoughts, and the rest of you can enjoy them for free. Number one, um, there is no perfect org structure. They all have trade-offs. Number two, there are two basic org structures: functional, and functional means you group all the people together who do one thing. All the testers go in one place, all the designers go in one place, all the marketers go in one place, et cetera, whatever your functions are. The advantage of functional is that all the test people have each other to rely on and learn from and to have morale with. And all the designers have that, and all the whatever, the data analysts or the architects. And if one of them goes out sick or quits or on vacation, they all know each other's work, and you can load share the work among who remains. That's the advantage of functional. The disadvantage of functional is everything's a bottleneck and nobody owns anything. In other words, when 10 projects need testing resources, there is some stack rank of priority. And if you're project number 10, you get starved and you get like the least good testing intern on Friday afternoon and you starve. And there's always more work to do than there are people. And so the problem of functional orgs is they create bottlenecks. So to my point, no organization is perfect. The opposite of functional orgs is project-based orgs, where you pull together a bunch of people on a project. Ideally, the leader manages all those people and is an owner. In Amazon, they call that a single-threaded owner who's working on one thing, and they call that team a two-pizza team. But you put all the functions necessary to build the product or complete the project on the team under the manager. And that way, none of those people are distracted. And they all have a sense of ownership because it's their product and it's their project. So those are the advantages. And those teams tend to crank out really good projects, and they never block on anyone because they own everything in their team. The disadvantage is, what if the tester quits, or what if the designer quits or gets sick or has a health crisis or goes on maternity or paternity leave? There's no one to back them up. And suddenly there's a hole in the team where expertise has been blown away and everybody is thrashing. Second, there's no community. I'm a lone designer embedded in a dev team. I'm a lone product manager. Who's my mentor? Who's coaching me? The dev manager? They don't know what I do. They just argue with me that the button should be blue rather than green. And so again, no org structure is perfect. No org structure has all the right attributes. Now we can talk about ways to deal with this. And essentially what those ways look like is you pick one of the org structures and then you try to fake the other benefits on top of it. So for example, if all the designers, let's say graphic designers, are embedded in teams, you organize like a designers guild that meets once a week for mentoring and development. And so they pull together and you try and create a community of designers even though they're not in the same org. Conversely, if you go with the functional and all the designers or testers are in one org, you still try to assign each one to a project so that projects know who their person is and they're not just in this endless work queue where they have no idea who they're going to get to work with and there's no sense of ownership, where the tester is like, well, yesterday I was testing iOS and today I'm testing Android and tomorrow I'll be testing the web page, and I can't get too worked up of whether or not they're well tested because the next day I'll be on to the next thing. So for you, Kristen, the thing to think about is which organizational structure best supports your company's goals. Because if your goals are rapid tech innovation that's different from, say, low chance, low risk of error. Those are different goals. Wanting to have a low risk environment is very different than wanting to have a high innovation environment. And of course, everybody wants all of this, but you have to decide.
Yeah. I mean, let's be realistic. Like, healthcare is not a very fast-paced industry,
So you want
and
to
especially
structure.
not with technology.
Yep.
And legal and supply chain like can be major blockers. InfoSec. I mean, it's not because they're not doing good work. It's just the nature of the beast, especially when you get to a certain size. So I don't really see us being able to be project based. Um, what we have done is we've created for certain initiatives that are considered to be like, crucial to meeting our goals. They've created like these fusion teams, right, where they're kind of handpicking people to be involved in this team for a year, embedded in this team for a year, which is a little bit project based, but we still primarily we're functional, and I don't know that we could change that even if I wanted to.
Well, he's asked you, so you never know. He seems, the good thing about your boss, he's planning on retiring, which means he's not bucking for promotion anymore. So he might be able to do things you don't expect because he can afford to push the boundaries a little, because as long as it doesn't get him fired or laid off,
Hmm.
like, you just never know. Look,
Well, he has a little bit more time. His boss is the one who's for sure retiring in like a
ah,
couple of years.
got it.
Um, so he may still yet move up
Okay. Well, the point
one
is,
more role in the hierarchy. But
uh, you know, yeah, ask questions,
so
push the limits a little, and get feedback. At least put your
yeah,
ideas out there, because you never
I
know.
guess.
Yeah.
Well, what I've been thinking. So you helped me kind of craft the language with my questions for my boss's boss, who, by the way, I'm meeting with again this week, for our second meeting, where we're going to start getting into the agenda items that I had shared. So for those of you who don't know, hashtag Discord. I posted in Discord an update from the conversation that I had with our CIO, and I'll be meeting with him quarterly. And so this is my next meeting with him. But I feel like one of the things you helped me, craft was talking about how we have an organization that has a lot of folks who've been around for a long time and are very conservative in their approach and risk adverse. And what we're trying to do is a lot of behavioral change. And that's really hard to do if your people feel like they can't speak up or change because their leaders aren't. And so part of what I think needs to happen is there needs to be some sort of a shakeup. Like when my one person that was leaving, I talked with him and I said, what would you do if you were me? If you could do anything, like pie in the
Good
sky,
question.
anything you wanted to do.
Good question.
He said, I would make directors and VPs of the organization have to interview for their jobs again every year. And I was like,
Every
we
year is a
talked
little
about it for a
harsh, but
while. And I was like, okay, well, maybe we don't go quite down that path, but maybe there is some sort of maybe it's not to keep your job, but to determine your placement. Like, anyone who's in a certain leadership position or above, every couple of years, 2 or 3 years, there's, some sort of peer, your boss's peer, right? That you have to persuade, you have to interview with your boss and that one other peer and convince them why you're still the right person in this position, why you're the right fit for that team. Because what's happened is a lot of people have just become very territorial. They're very conservative. They don't like change. They definitely don't want you causing them to have to change. And that's totally anti this whole like let's not be siloed goal that we have. So that's one of my like wild thoughts. I'm just like, how can I get these people to break the norms? How can I get these VPs to build better relationships? Because that's what they really need. there's
well,
not
they apparently
there's some
also,
not healthy relationships there.
relationships is good, and willingness to take risk, to be willing to change. I know your nightstand is overloaded, but the two super short books, if you haven't read them, Who Moved My Cheese and I Moved Your Cheese.
Yeah, I still haven't read those. I've
Those
heard
are
of them.
those are both like 90 minutes apiece, by the way. They're quick. You used to be a super reader. Do I have to come whip that husband of yours to
Uh,
get him to do some more childcare? What's up?
oh, it's more
Because
like I'm brain dead by the end of the night. Actually, do you know what changed? I stopped reading these types of books before bed, which is really the only time I have to read because I can't get to sleep. I get so jazzed, like my brain just starts firing on all cylinders and I have all these ideas and then I have a really hard time sleeping and I have to prioritize my sleep or I'm just a terrible person. So I haven't been reading these books at night, which makes it really hard for me to find time to read. I've been reading like terrible like young adult fiction. Like that's what I
sweet.
read at
No,
night.
I get it. Well, I mean, you're doing really well, but don't stop investing in yourself. You have to find a way
Mm.
to invest in yourself.
Well, I'm reading the book to prepare for our conversation on flow.
Good. Which
I
one?
am reading that one. The one that you told me was the best one. The
Yeah,
impossible, what's it
The Art
called?
of
Something about
Impossible.
impossible. Yeah. Yep.
This book,
Yeah, so
everybody.
if anyone wants to join in for when Ethan and I discuss flow, which is going to be coming up in the next probably couple months,
It's this
this is the
book.
book that
Get
I'm
it?
reading that he read.
This
It's
book,
really good.
man, it'll push you. Like,
Yeah.
man, it's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm reading through that and I'm taking a lot of notes because I want to pilot a couple things with my team. Since I've already got a baseline of data that I've been tracking for the last 6 months on them having heads down time in order to hopefully achieve flow. But I'm gonna run some pilots based off what I learned from this book.
It's a
I'm pretty
good book.
excited.
So when you're done with it, we'll talk. I'm super
Mhm.
excited. I'm now reading another book in that space that I won't go into right now, and I don't want you to read. It's enormously thick. Read some of the little ones, but this is good too. All right, everybody. Well, for Kristen, it's midnight, so I'm gonna let her go. This has been a good talk. We'll talk about org when you want. Send me anything you want on your raise, but honestly, you're well equipped. Just arm your boss and don't condense it down and ask him what give him the list and let him tell you what he wants more details on. For everybody
Okay.
else, I hope you've heard how to get a raise, and I'm going to go back to the beginning. Getting a raise is a lot about how you ask, but it's even more about being worth giving a raise to. And by the way, anyone at any company can get a raise if they're valuable enough. Companies that are going bankrupt give raises to a few people. They give them stay packages. They do all kinds of stuff. And it's about two things: being worth it and asking. And so we've had people get huge raises here in the channel. We've had people get consistent raises. Kristen will come back, no doubt, and tell us a success story. And look, she's looking to get 15%. None of you would be sad to get 15% more pay than whatever you're making right now. So, we'd all take it. So,
Yeah. Oh,
Kristen.
and the last comment I'll leave you with is um, so I know that I'm working on a trajectory to move up to the next level.
Yep.
I also know that if I don't get a raise in my current role, I'm going to be in the same position when I move up to that next role. I'm going to be
Yep.
really limited on what they can pay me as a director because of the whole restriction on we really don't want to give more than X percentage of a raise. So I learned where those dividing lines
Yep.
are. So I know about where I need to get in order to make the most of that promotion
Yep.
when it comes time to do
Yep.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. Completely.
So planning ahead.
Strategic. All right. Good job, man. So yeah, Kristen, it turns out is when I go bankrupt on Dogecoin. No, that's not going to happen. But if I did, she's going to be there to backstop me from her ample supply of wealth, and it'll all be good.
No, it was really weird talking about all the things I think I've done well. And so thanks, chat, for like hanging in there for me because I feel like super egotistical right now. Just the fact that I've been talking about all the good things. Maybe next time I'll talk about all the
All
things
the
that I've
bad
done
things,
really shitty.
all the
Yeah.
mistakes.
Yeah. All the
Well,
mistakes that somehow I'm still getting a raise because
well, look, sometimes we all make mistakes. We won't go into that, but anyway. All right, cool. Everybody, I'm going to call it a night. She's going to call it a night. Kristen, I will let you go. I'll kill the Zoom. I'll see you soon, but talk
sounds
to you
good.
later.
All right. See ya.
Cheers. And then for everybody else, we'll come back here real quick. I am going to do the show in 48 hours or less, 45 hours now, about how to build out the Mentor Network tech. So I don't know, Renee, if you're still lurking down there in Mexico. But if you are, if you're up in LA, I know you're going to visit LA, I think. Make sure I have what I need. You've spelled out for me in Discord private DMs what I need to ask for. I'm going to read all those documents from you and DT tomorrow. And so with that, it's time for me to go relax for the night. I've been working since 8 a.m. Let's see. Is there some question in here that I'm missing? Nope. Looks like everybody got their questions answered. Close enough anyway. So with that, I will see you all later. Cheers and thank you so much. Please come back and enjoy.